We are going to officially start our scheduled and noticed work session this morning, so call the meeting to order. I do believe Alderman Holt will not be attending the meeting today, and Alderman Lehman will be eventually joining us electronically via Zoom. Couple quick things. This is just a work session. Nothing will be officially approved or voted on by the board today. I want to thank our department heads that are here with us and our city administrator that is here. They worked extremely hard on preparing this budget for us. So with all due respect, I would like to turn it over to our city administrator, give her the opportunity to review the budget with us. And then I do intend the board considering approving the budget this coming Tuesday at our regular scheduled Board of Aldermen meeting.
Thank you and good morning, and thank you for being here. And 1 second. Oh, I have this. Oh, share. There.
Brian, can you hear Sheila okay? Are we good?
Yeah, we should be good.
All right, great.
Okay, so there are a lot of slides here, and I'm going to try to be as quick as possible, but I also really want to make sure that you guys understand what is in the budget. This is the board's most important job that they ever do in any year, is approving the budget, because it's the whole plan for what we can do as a city. And so I really appreciate your guys' time this morning. So the very most important thing that we focused on in this year's budget was employee retention and attraction. This budget includes a $1.3 million increase in personnel costs, which is a 29.1% increase over last year's budget. If you will look on page 77 in your budget book, this is where the personnel is located. There's also a tab if you want to look at that. And basically this schedule tells you what positions were requested, what positions were actually funded, and then what grade each position was. And so we'll kind of go over what made up that $1.3 million of increase in personnel costs. But this, starting on page 77, that is the beginning of our new personnel salary schedule. And every position that was budgeted and authorized is listed on this schedule with their pay grade level. So this pay scale came from looking at market rates and looking at comparing and matching job duties for different positions. So police is probably the easiest one for me to kind of explain this, but a captain that works for the city of Kearney may not do the same job duties that a captain in Liberty or Gladstone would do. And so it's really important not to compare job titles and how much each agency is paying per title. Instead, you have to look at, like, okay, the job duties that our captains are performing are the same as the lieutenants at another agency, if that makes sense. And so it's not as easy to just say this title is this title, because maybe an employee at a different agency would be performing different duties, if that makes sense. And we're trying to make sure that if one of our employees, if we're hiring somebody, that we are fairly compensating them, and that another agency isn't going to be able to snatch them up just because they would get more. Like, maybe our employee wouldn't be qualified to take a different job because they wouldn't have the same experience or education level. So we spent a lot of time looking at that. And so that's how the grade the grade was determined and the market rate. So we have like a 18 steps, and maybe I should wait before I go into that part. The other thing that I really wanted to tell you guys is the minimum hourly rate before last year, currently right now, the lowest amount we would ever pay an employee is $17.03 an hour. With this salary schedule, the minimum hourly rate would be $18.60 an hour. That is more competitive so that we can attract employees, and that's an increase of 9.2%. We're trying to make sure that we're focusing that people can afford to work here, especially if you're a young person that has a family and is trying to, you know, put dinner on the table and pay for childcare so that you can work. And of course, I walked in one day and there was a ad or a flyer from the post office, and I was like, oh my gosh, our employees are gonna leave, work for the post office. And sometimes you have, like, we have great benefits, right? As a city, we have loggers, and if you went to Mr. Dell Foods, you're not going to get that benefit. Maybe you're not gonna get all the holidays that you would get as a city employee, but the post office has some good benefit packages, and so we wanted to look at that, and we wanted to make sure that we were competitive and able to attract employees and keep them. So also in this budget is an allowance for employees to get up to two-step merit increase. So on an employee's anniversary date, they would get a one-step increase, and each step is 2.5%. So if you turn to page 79, you can kind of see the salary schedule that is laid out. It's perfectly square, and what that means is that there's 2.5% between each step, and there's 2.5% between each grade. So you'll see, you know, each step kind of mirrors by 2.5%. And so a one-step increase would be 2.5%. So every employee on their anniversary date is eligible for up to 2 steps, 1 step for adequate performance, 2 steps if they have exemplary performance and they have met all the expectations and the goals that have been set out for them, they would be eligible for 2 steps. And the cost of these performance-based merit increases, if every single employee would get 2 steps, it'd be $203,200. And then every year we will be looking to see, we're going to be reviewing positions with the market, and we might place people on different grades in future years. But we took a lot of time to try to make sure that that each person is put where they're markedly competitive, and then also we really want to focus on giving employees feedback so that they can be successful and so that they know what the expectations are. And in the past, we haven't necessarily been doing annual reviews, and we're going to be starting that.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Cost of living, are those 2 steps, are they gonna take into consideration the cost of living too?
So if we gave a cost of living, there's not a cost of living in this budget, and the reason for that is it wasn't necessary because we placed everyone onto the salary schedule, and so that kind of compensated for that this year. Yeah. If we ever do a cost of living increase, then it gets applied to the entire scale.
Okay.
So the entire scale, each step on the scale would increase so that the salary schedule would stay square, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
But that's not taken into account this year. Also, there are 18 steps for each grade, which allows employees to have more time before they top out. And this is where it becomes very, very important to keep reevaluating these grades and where the employees are. so that the hope is that nobody ever is going to top out. Now, there might be a situation where somebody does. Let's just say you're a custodian and you've been a custodian for 42 years. We're not going to keep increasing the salary if you wouldn't, if we're not gonna pay a custodian $80,000 a year to be a custodian. That wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't be good steward of tax dollars, if that makes sense. And so there could be a situation where you have a long-term employee that never stayed with the organization, where they became topped out. But for employees that are continuing to improve their education, their skills, and grow with the organization, they're not going to top out.
Thank you.
All right, so of that total increase in personnel costs, $132,600 of that has to do with benefits. And the majority of that, workers' compensation, but the other big expense there is that I assumed a 10% increase in health, dental, and vision insurance premiums. And I also am pretty conservative, so I never want to come to you guys and tell you that I didn't budget enough for personnel costs and that now we either have to get rid of a position that we had budgeted or lay people off. And so to protect for that, if we have a vacant position, well, I budget every employee exactly what they, like if there's family insurance, I'm budgeting them at family. If they are single, I'm budgeting them at single. If we have a vacant position, no matter what, I'm budgeting it at family because it's to protect. And then if we have an employee who is not getting, they have not chosen to be on the city's plan, I go ahead and budget for them as single. So every employee has at least single, and if it's vacant, I'm gonna budget it at family. I feel like that has always served me well in the past, and you never know if somebody's gonna have a baby and they're gonna switch in the middle of the year from single to family, or any of that stuff, and that has been pretty safe. And so that is also this year some differences. I budgeted for every single employee to get the wellness benefit. Not every employee will get the wellness benefit, but to be safe, and I budgeted for the service awards, and loggers and life insurance and long-term disability insurance. So I feel like we have everything included. In this proposed budget, $678,000, almost $679,000 of that is for 6 new positions, plus the animal control code enforcement office position hadn't actually been included in personnel costs. So that animal control code enforcement officer is kind of driving that amount up, even though it was an authorized position last year. The 6 new positions are 2 new patrol officers, a new accounts payable payroll clerk, an economic development director, an assistant utilities and street director, and a GIS IT specialist. These positions, the hope is that we increase employee safety, especially in the police department. So we're trying to make sure that we have 4 people. We're able to put 4 people on each shift. So, and then if somebody calls in sick or if somebody wants to go to training, we could still allow, we need a minimum of 2 people on shift at any time. That's the minimum. We prefer 3. 4 gives us a little cushion so that we're not having to create overtime and call people in if somebody gets sick or takes a vacation, if that makes sense. Also, just increasing employees' opportunity to actually take their time off, that is a benefit to them, and obviously reducing overtime is the hope. And then almost $84,000 of increased professional development. for training, and that does include some trainings for the board also, but really focusing on making sure that we are developing employees and giving them the tools that they need to be successful in their jobs. So, if I'm gonna kind of skip around, I don't know if you guys want to look at page 8, which is kind of the general fund summary page. So the general fund, I think, is the absolutely #1 most important fund in a city. And the reason for that is because general fund revenue can be used for anything. There's no restrictions. And so while all of our other funds are restricted and can, by law, can only be used for certain things. So if we had an emergency and, you know, we had an earthquake or a tornado, we would not be able to use water and sewer revenue to help fund police. And of course, if you have a situation like that, you're going to need a lot to be paying a lot of police overtime. So it's very important to have a good, healthy general fund. And in this case, our operating revenues are $6.7 million, and our operating expenditures are also $6.7 million, which is a balanced budget. And we have a little bit of excess that we hope will add to our fund balance. But basically this year, we've almost used every single penny of current revenues for operations. And there are some opportunities, hopefully this year, with the 3% medical or recreational marijuana sales tax that could help with that. But for right now, what our budget is almost $9,000 revenues over expenditures if everything came in exactly as planned. We also are spending almost $300,000 for capital outlay. That money is not coming from those operating revenues, it's coming from fund balance, which are savings from previous years that we have built up. And so our projected end of year fund balance would be $1.5 million, or 22.6% of operating expenditures. I don't know if the board has ever had any discussions about having targeted fund balance reserves. I think probably a minimum of 25% is where we want to go, but probably it would be better to go up to 35 or 40%. We're not going to be able to do that in a single year. We would need to kind of make a plan to do that. But if I did not see that we had an actual policy, and maybe later this year or the next, we'll actually kind of delve into that and let the board make an actual decision, and we'll talk about, but that would be a decision that the board needs to make. Here I have just a graph that kind of shows operating revenues. You can see them, the biggest amount comes from taxes in the general fund, with the next amount from charges for services. And then if you look at our expenditures, you can see police by far takes up the biggest chunk of general fund. And of course it would, because we're not charging people for when they call 911 or for police responding. We have police on call 24/7 to take care and protect our community. And so they don't actually have, they're not put in a special fund. We're using general fund revenue because they don't have their own revenue source. And that completely makes sense. City Hall is the next biggest percentage, and that is going to be all your administrative support for, that is supporting all the departments and funds in the city. So wanted to really go into our revenues and tell you some of the changes. So our general fund revenues are up $1.9 million. And taxes are up 10.7%. And the big chunk of that is because of utility franchise tax. It's an in lieu of tax payment that is being proposed for the water and sewer fund. All utilities that are operating in the city limits, they are paying the general fund an in lieu of tax, or a franchise tax. And our water and sewer funds have not in the past been paying that. And I will kind of talk about that in a few minutes more about why that's a good idea and that they should be doing that. Licenses and permit revenue is down 34.2%, and that is because thinking that building permits are going to slow down next fiscal year. And we've already seen that happening as interest rates have risen. People are being a little bit slower to invest into the community. Intergovernmental revenue is completely flat. Charges for services up 224%, and that is because we are now charging all of the funds for the administrative services that have been being provided for them that they haven't been paying for. So it's just been general fund money that has been being used instead of billing those departments for that cost. Fine revenue flat, interest earnings and miscellaneous are up 338%. That's completely because of higher interest rates. And then interfund transfers are up 11.5%, and that is because we have a projected growth of sales tax of 8%, and then an entire 12 months of use tax. All right, so the utility franchise tax in lieu of tax. So all of the private utilities operating inside city limits are required to pay a franchise tax of 5% of gross receipts. And the reason that the city charges that is because utility companies use the public right-of-ways, and it reimburses the city for overhead on our assets, wear and tear, and related city expenses incurred as a result of the utility operating in the city. I don't know, how many calls for service we're getting from police if somebody smells gas, or if somebody sees water trickling out, but our police officers are being used because we have utilities operating in the city. And so this is a way for the general fund to get repaid by those utility companies. And our water and sewer funds are proprietary funds. They're enterprise funds, which means that they are supposed to be operated like any other utility company that's not owned by the city. And so for good accounting principles, it is a good idea to charge them exactly what we are charging other utilities. And then the other big change is the administrative service fee charge. So the general fund provides a lot of professional services to all city departments. It's where we're funding our city attorney from. It's where we're funding payroll, financial reporting, the cost of the audit. All of those expenses are being provided simply to support all of the other departments. And so this administrative service fee, it's a formula that we created based on actual usage and actual support that each department is getting, and it is going to reimburse the general fund for their share. So the city hall budget, it's $1.5 million. It's an increase of $830,000 or 129.4%. The reason that is because we realigned positions. So there were positions that were being paid out of other funds and being split apart. And an example would be utility billing. It's being paid 100% by water and sewer. But the problem is that utility billing does more than just water and sewer billing. Doing money receipting for all of the other funds, doing, answering questions, general questions that come in, all kinds of different things. Water and sewer money should only be used for water and sewer expenses. It's restricted money. And so we put any employee who does work for multiple departments are all going to be budgeted in the general fund now, so that that money can be appropriately recouped from the correct fund, if that makes sense. There were 3 positions that were reorganized that got moved into the city hall budget. The finance director position, it was being allocated between general fund and water and sewer. Now it's 100% in city hall. And then Shirley's position and Becky's position, those were only being paid by water and sewer. They do work for many other city departments, and they are now being paid from city hall entirely, and then the different funds are going to reimburse city hall for that work. There are 2 new positions added. That was the economic development director and the payroll payable clerk. Also included in there are Microsoft 365 licenses for the entire city. Community engagement software, it's called Polco, and I think the board will get a lot of use out of that, because you'll be able to ask questions to the community and get good engagement, so you kind of know what the community is thinking. And we as staff will also get a lot of benefit out of it. There's a priority goal setting leadership workshop in the budget, and we have legal fees are increased because of litigation that is ongoing. We have appeals going on, and that's where that's why legal fees are up. Then non-departmental, that department, the park transfer, there was no change, but that is the biggest percentage of what that money is going for. We make a $474,000 transfer to the park fund, and then the park debt service and police station debt service, those are debt service payments that we are transferring out of the general fund to pay those bills. And please stop me if you guys have any questions. Okay. The municipal court, it's a $149,000 budget this year, up 12% or 9.1%. And really there was no change. It was just an increase of costs. So we didn't add any programs, we didn't add anything. And you can see personnel is a little over 50%. Services, which I think is kind of also personnel, because we're paying for the prosecutor and the judge, and they're in services. It's not payroll. And so next is the community development department. It's up $12,000 this year, and really that is because there's one position, the reorganized position of animal control, that is in there. You can see that 72% of that department is personnel costs. Economic development, so this budget is down 84.6%, and that is because we are not funding the Kearney Area Development Council economic development contract. And I moved the innovation interest contingency to capital outlay. I didn't want it to be taking up operating revenues, because we're probably not going to spend it, so it is being budgeted in the capital outlay in the general fund. So the only thing in the economic development, that $20,000 is the Chamber of Commerce contract.
And that, does that include the hiring, the salary for the new position?
That's
It's
under City Hall.
for the economic development position, that is in City Hall.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
that is in the City Hall budget, which is one of the reasons that that's so much bigger this year.
Okay, thank you.
Then the Firehouse Center, you can see we're paying for the utilities for the old firehouse building, and then we are also paying for services. And 95% is services and almost 5% is utilities. And then the Historic Museum, that's up $1,000. You can see almost 53% is supplies, almost 30% is utilities, and then some services money.
Can we hit there? I think, could you, I may be jumping ahead, but mention the, well, we're gonna start holding back for future improvements. Is that later?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
in the capital outlay budget.
Okay, perfect.
So our police department, so this is a $395,000 increase over last year, or 16.9% increase. They have 2 new positions budgeted. Also included in their operating budget is Lexipol. It's a risk management solution for law enforcement. And you will have a question.
Can you expand on that a little bit? What risk what risk are you managing?
Really, do you want to talk about it?
It's our department policy. We have policies and procedures that kind of dictate how the guys handle each incident.
Okay.
And Lexipol is a professional company that writes up-to-date policy. When I took this job a little over a year ago, I updated my policies, but they were just policies that the prior chief had written with the city attorney, and they're not real updated.
Okay.
Lexipol is used by most other departments around here, and they, when laws change, they're on top of it, and they change your policy right then and there. Where sometimes, we might be a little slower doing that, but it's just up-to-date policies on how our officers operate.
Great, I think that's a great expenditure. That's really good. Thank you.
Also in the operating budget, I think it's in operating and in capital, because we're going to kind of do a subscription for stationary license plate readers, but we also have an initial investment that's in the capital outlay. But included in this budget is enough budget to get 14 stationary license plate readers. And they will be placed strategically at different entrances and exits to the city. And also, I believe that Gladstone, Clay County, other.
Gladstone has them in place now. We started researching them unbeknownst to us. Clay County, Gladstone, Liberty, Excelsior, we're already together looking at the systems, and they're looking at the flock system. We initially started looking at in-car. We talked to some other agencies. They say the mounted cameras, they're having way more success with the mounted cameras than they are the in-car cameras. Clay County's working on putting theirs in place. I think Liberty and Excelsior, they're checking to see if they can come up with the money in a budget to implement them.
And so these cameras use artificial intelligence to appropriately contact dispatch officers if they need to come in and look to investigate something.
If there's a wanted car that enters our city, they're notified, or if a car, they know a license plate from somebody that robbed a bank in Excelsior, they enter it through our community, it alerts.
And it's a great investigative tool after the fact. We had an ATM theft a couple weeks ago. They brought a stolen truck up here. They pried the ATM open with a stolen pickup truck. But then we found out later through investigation, they had a couple other cars involved, so they dumped the truck on us when they were done with it. Got into some other cars, and we had the license plate readers around the city. Those cars may have had legitimate license plates on them, and we may have had some good leads, so. They're, like I say, even after the fact, they're a great investigative tool.
I feel like they'll make our community
Much safer.
much safer.
And I almost feel like a lot of, if you watch the news, Blue Springs just got them, they're getting really popular. I'm almost afraid that if you don't have them, you might be the target for the bad guys, because
Yeah.
they're becoming very popular.
So are these mounted on poles, or are they on our lights? Or
They are
where
mounted
they
on
at?
poles, and there's a lot of restrictions where you can mount them for
Okay.
safety. They have to be behind guardrails, and I believe they're solar operated.
Okay.
We're kind of in the beginning stages of researching them, but
Okay.
they're becoming very popular, and just a great,
Will they
Great
have a
tool.
battery backup, so if we have.
they would be
a-
solar with a battery, yeah.
Okay,
So-
perfect.
Maybe a notification of some sort if something goes bad.
Yeah,
Like-
yeah.
Also included in the police department's budget, in their operating budget, they just didn't meet, the dollar amount didn't meet the capital outlay level, which is why they're in operating. Just, so anything under $5,000 is not going to be a capital outlay item. It's going to be an operating. 5 tasers, 5 new body cameras, 2 semi-munition training guns, 1 rifle rated tactical shield, and 2 mobile fingerprint readers.
Who gets the shield? There'll be a fight over the shield.
Yeah, we put a couple of pistol shields in our budget last year that we have ordered, waiting to receive, and this will be a rifle shield that will stop the bigger rounds if needed.
All right, so you want to be here a long time on Saturday
No,
morning?
yeah, I know.
All right.
Try to lighten the mood up just a second.
Yeah, it's pretty thick. So, Public Works, it's a brand new department in the budget. And the reason why is because Public Works, it supports many different departments. Mainly, it's supporting water, street, and sewer. However, they support more than that. Donnie's expertise is called in for many different things. He's been working with the park on the pickleball courts. David asked some questions, and so moving Donnie and the 2 new positions that are included in the budget, the Assistant Streets and Utilities Director and the GIS IT Specialist, that is going to be supporting many different ones, makes it so that street and water and sewer aren't the only ones that are paying. It's being fairly, everybody's being fairly charged for the services that they're using.
More equitable.
Yes. And then solid waste. So there is you guys have already adopted, David would say, don't say you guys, we have already adopted, entered into a contract with Republic Services. There's a 5.7% increase in solid waste expense. That is taking into account I don't know that we actually budgeted enough money in prior years. And so part of that 5.7% is the increase in the trash contract that is already agreed to, and then also actually reflecting how much money I thought that we were going to be spending.
So had we been billing that increase, or what's been absorbing that increase?
General fund has been, we have not been billing it,
Passing that along?
so we will be
Okay.
passing it along.
Interesting.
There's not an ordinance that I could find that you guys actually adopt the rates, the charges for trash. So I'm gonna look more into that, but I could not find one. Then here's our lovely capital outlay. So general fund capital outlay, remember, none of this is being spent out of current operations. At some point, our goal should be to be adding to our general fund balance. That is not the case. We're actually spending money out of that this year. And that's okay, as long as we're not doing it every single year. And we definitely need a long-term plan. But we have $30,000 that I don't actually expect will be spent for the innovation for the interest contingency. Then we have set aside, so one of the requests this year was $175,000 for the exterior restoration of the museum. Instead of spending all of our reserves, just the plan is to put $10,000 and then try to keep adding to that each year until we have enough money saved up for that project.
Hopefully we'll be able to do more than this amount every year, otherwise it'll be 17 years, and if it's already been in need for over 4 years of some extensive work, and those issues are starting to translate into the interior of the building in 17 years, that 175 will be much more.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
it'll be interior too.
And it's super challenging, right? Like we
I
have,
know.
we have revenues and we have expenses, and so you have two choices. You can
Oh,
increase revenues, or
I
you can decrease
understand.
expenses, right? And so there's always a decision. This is why this
Yeah.
is so important that you guys know what we're proposing
Yeah.
spending the money on, because maybe you want to stop doing something, a service that we are providing now. And that's why it's super important for you guys to understand what's in here, so that you can make those decisions.
Definitely a start, and
Yep.
I hope that maybe there's some grant opportunities and stuff too that we could help extend
See,
our,
that's what we need, is a
Yeah.
good grant writer for our
Mhm.
city.
Yeah. Well, our new finance director, she actually has some good experience with running grants, so that's really,
That's some
Good.
good work.
so again, the capital outlay, the initial capital outlay for the stationary license plate reader cameras. Also included in this budget is our new mobile radios.
but those are for inside the vehicle, right? Because we just got handheld, is that correct?
It's probably been about 5 years ago, but yes, our handhelds are encryption capable.
Okay,
Yeah, and this is just the mounted radios in the patrol cars.
And then a thermal drone is included, e-ticketing software and equipment for our police officers, and then 2 new patrol cars and the equipment that they will need to get them street ready.
some may say really a thermal drone. You mentioned this yesterday when we met with the employees. That'll be used, other departments can use that as well as needed, Public Works, Parks. But I don't know if you know this or not, Chief, but Clinton County Sheriff's Office just did a press release of a guy that ran a small manhunt, and with their drone, they found him swimming across one of the lakes in Lake Arrowhead. So they are an effective tool.
Yeah. Okay, so
It's a little
now.
cold to be swimming.
Now, just kind of gonna go quickly, these are general fund, obviously, very detailed, so I'm just gonna kind of hit some of the very important but smaller, less complicated funds on one slide. So the DWI drug fund, there's $70 budgeted. This fund can only be used to fund DWI drug enforcement costs. And that $70 is actually the administrative charge that's reimbursing City Hall for receipting, for doing the bank reconciliation, for allocating the interest, for writing whatever receipts that are coming in and that are related to that. So
Sheila, so when police officers issue citations and the court assesses a fine, does that, remind me, does that go straight to general fund, or is it a different restricted fund?
it goes, there is a part that goes to the general fund. There are some fines, but if it's a DWI or drug related case, the officers actually turn into the court their time for a charge to the court, and the court will assess it. That money, that reimbursement for, if they're convicted, goes directly into this DWI drug fund. because it's restricted money.
Do you know what our fine income or what that, or the total amount that we assessed last year? Or this year, or?
Yes, so if you look at page 24, it's the DWI drug tab, Fund 11. You can see what happened in fiscal year 2021. So we got $1,662. In fiscal year 2, we got $1,671. And in 2023, it looks like we're gonna get $1,400. So you can see that it was budgeted that we'd get $1,675. When we did the projection to look to see what have we actually got this year, how is it trending? So the estimate is that it's only gonna be $1,400. And then you can see that I budgeted $1,400 for this fiscal year 2024.
So businesses saying that we're prowling and setting on their businesses, I think I can show historical numbers
Yeah,
that
we're not making, yeah.
we're not writing a lot of tickets.
Or I don't know that you can say that. What we can say is that we haven't had as much violation, or we haven't caught as many people doing it. Or maybe people are just making better choices. I don't know.
I hope that's what it is.
Yeah. Then use tax. This fund is gonna get an entire year. It is funding, and let's go to page 25 if you don't mind. Basically, it's paying general fund back for the administration, but then it's also, I'm transferring money out except for the debt service for the pickleball lease, the pickleball complex lease. Everything is being transferred out. So the money for the money that's going to the general fund for public safety, that is the actual salary and benefits that are budgeted for 2 officers, which is what the use tax was supposed to be spent for. The amount under animal control, that is the salary and benefits for the animal control officer. And then you can see that we're transferring $504,600 to a park construction fund. That actually is Hall Park. And also some money to sidewalk and trail construction. And that is actually a fund, a capital project fund, and that will fund sidewalks and trails. So if I had done this, if I had set this up, there would be nothing actually spent out of here except for going to the appropriate place. But I didn't set it up. And so we're going to have some debt service that continues to be paid out of here until we pay it off. And then we have a sales tax fund. It's $2 million. It's the 1% unrestricted general sales tax that the city receives. We're paying some debt service for the Clear Creek pedestrian bridge and the 92 highway sidewalk. And then the balance all goes to the general fund to pay for general fund expenses. And then we have park development fees. There's $62,000 budgeted in this fund. It is paying debt service on the Lions Park renovation. The permit fees that are being generated are not sufficient to pay that debt service. So the general fund is making a supplemental transfer to help pay that debt service.
Tell me how much we've made in fees off of the splash park?
Well, the fees are not made off of the splash park. Like, we're not charging anyone to use it.
Right, it's the, yes,
It's
those
having
things.
the covered areas,
Yes,
being
right,
able to be
right.
out of the sun.
The rental.
Well,
Yeah. Shelter.
the
You
money
pay
that
for
is
the
coming
shelter.
into that
Thank
fund
you.
is actually coming from permits. So when somebody builds a house in the city,
Mhm.
they are charged a fee, and that money from that fee was going into this
Okay.
fund to pay for park capital improvements.
So it's not the fees from the shelters?
Correct.
Okay.
It's from the from building, new buildings.
$325 per. you want
And there was
Instead
a-
of fee in lieu of.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's in lieu of, instead of
Park, yeah.
insisting or requiring a developer to perhaps do a pocket park
Yeah.
in each neighborhood and doing some of those things. So our developers are getting away very easy.
Yes, they are. And
Very
because
easy.
building permits are projected to be down next year, so are the revenues.
sure.
From that fee. And also, it's my understanding that the board, for a long period of time, suspended all building permit fees, which impacted the money that this fund would have collected. Then we have the cemetery fund, and it receives donations and then also a very small fee if somebody purchases a lot.
About 6 of them.
And so the general fund actually helps supplement this, and but there is a little bit budgeted from this actual fund on top of what is being budgeted in the general fund. And then the police training fund, this fund receives $2 from each moving traffic violation and a $1 fee assessed for training administrative court personnel. Also, it gets an amount from the state, and it's funding that's only allowed to be used for post-certified police officers. We have $7,000 budgeted in this fund.
No, I think we'll start.
So next we have the park fund. So you can see operating revenues of almost 732,000. Operating expenditures of about 709,000 gives us revenues over expenditures of about 22,000. They also are spending $136,000 on capital outlay that is coming from their fund balance. And their projected end of year fund balance is going to be about $129,000 at the end of the year. You can see most of their revenues come from transfers.
So we anticipate 42,400 revenue on the amphitheater, but are anticipating 57,100 in expenditures. Is there any way to have that at least minimum break even? What's the plan for the amphitheater this year?
Well, this budget is budgeting for 5 to 6 events. So there are already 3 events that are already booked. If you did those 3 events, you could redo only those 3 events and didn't do 5 to 6, instead of losing $15,600. Wait, it's not losing, there's some benefit, right? Like, there's a community benefit. And if that's, and you guys have to decide how much
It's an
money you
amenity.
want to spend on that. So right now, we're budgeting to spend $15,600. That's what I'm gonna say, because that is the amount of money we're gonna pay over and above what we're gonna bring in.
I understand, this will be a topic I really want the board to dial in on our retreat and planning on this.
That was something that I was gonna ask. Is there things that we can do? Is it better advertising? Because I feel like the idea is good, having that amphitheater out there, having a lot of stuff out there. But I'm not sure we're drawing the crowds. If we were drawing the crowds, this number would probably be closer together. I don't need it to be a money-making thing, but I don't want it to like cost us a ton of money either. And so I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's better advertising, if it's different kinds of things. I had in my questionnaire from the newspaper, one of the questions they asked is, what can we do to bring more value for entertainment and recreation for teens and tweens? So do we bring something in that's more interesting to them? Like bring a concert in that makes more sense for them versus the older folks. And I don't know, I'm not criticizing, I'm just asking those questions. Yes, we have the skate park, but not everybody wants to skate, you know. Yes, we have walking trails and bikes and all that, but are there other things? And that's a hard question. It was hard for me to answer because I don't know. I think that's,
Sure.
you know, I'm not a teen or tween and I don't have any in my life, so I don't know the answer to
I
that.
think you guys do a good job, but I do think some of it is advertising. You have to spend money to make money. I think one of the biggest years, you had that big billboard in Northtown.
Well, the thing of it is when we had national acts in the past, we know that you are going to lose an exorbitant amount of money. We're going away from that. Last year, we talked about having smaller acts, make it more community friendly, offer some free shows. That was what we were gearing to, because we can't do that anymore. We know it's been shown. On the teen acts, if someone is a teen pop star and they have one, and Ryan, you can chime in as well, but if you have one thing on the radio, you're looking at $40,000 or $50,000. It's crazy, it's nuts. We want to do away with that. We were planning on doing, right now we've got the 3 acts booked. One is that we did from last year because of the heat,
Right.
and we moved them to June. That's our paying act that we wanted to do for this year. The other 2, we were gonna offer as an amenity, July 3rd, naturally,
Sure.
have our act, and then one other act in August, and make that a community event where people come out, meet their neighbors. But we need some more direction from you, what you think we should do, and we can do a better job of doing that. We don't like losing money either, absolutely not.
And I think the park board definitely needs to have some input in it. I mean, I'm sure you've got a great board there, and I think that they should have some input as well, but.
Maybe that's another topic for our retreat.
For sure, yeah, I think so. For this year, the budget's
Amphitheater.
fine, right? That just, you know, I do think that, I know that Ryan and Eric has heard my message on, I'd rather see 2,000 people out there for a free show than a couple hundred that pay $70 for a ticket and we still lose 40 grand, right?
Right.
You've done a good job with that message, but that is something that I want to make sure is on our agenda at our board retreat, that we dial in on and give them clear direction of our desire there.
Is there an opportunity for partnering, like with charities or something like that, that would drive attendance?
We have tried that once, but then it was canceled.
Right, they've come, and we've got some people that want to do some Christian shows that are looking at renting the amphitheater, where it would be a fee, and they would pay all the fees, and that would come in as a Christian show. That's something that there's a couple of people right now looking at different dates and some things, so that's
Cool.
That's in the works, but we can't say, you know.
Sure, you can't budget for that,
Right.
sure, and I get that, Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So the park fund looks a little bit different this year. We just added more detail, so that we could clearly see how much each program is costing us. So you can see, you know, here's our revenues from recreation, and here are our expenses from recreation, and here's our income from, so of course here we have the revenues. Here you can see that park maintenance, which is maintaining the grounds, like that's the biggest cost that we have, followed by park administration, followed by recreation programs, and followed by amphitheater. And then I broke it out where you can see personnel costs are 49% of our budget. Services is, you know, almost 32%. So just giving more detail in the budget is going to allow us to do more analysis to make sure that we are meeting your objectives. When you say, hey, we are focusing on bringing people from the outside of our community in, or no, we're focusing on just offering an amenity just for our citizens, or like, there's not a right or wrong answer, but we need you guys to be in consensus on what it is you want so that we can succeed.
If I may interject, our fireworks show is a well-attended event. And just so you know, we have our contract with our Premier Pyrotechnics runs through July of '24. So that's locked up for this summer and then again next year. So that's locked in.
All right, and then next is the transportation, oh wait, park capital outlay, sorry, I got ahead of myself. They are, and I fixed it, Mayor and Eric and Ryan, where they're going to be purchasing a new tractor, a larger tractor that will help them do more things so that they're not having to borrow equipment from other departments. Also a tilt trailer, and then we're looking at adding 3 automatic park gates at Mac Porter and Jesse James. That will also help our police department. They actually spend their time now having to go out and lock the gates each night. And so these automatic park gates should help not only park staff, but also police.
Presentation yesterday may or may not say 22-inch trailer. So that's an important update, thank you.
Very important.
Hot Wheels.
Yeah, that's what I said. That's what I said. Yeah, it can carry some Hot Wheels.
Honestly, now I said, now
I didn't
David's
even
pointing out that
notice
I
it.
said 83 foot. I changed both the 83
Yeah,
and the 22
it's still
to be.
22-foot long trailer, that's
Right,
about all.
there we go.
Now it's big enough to carry anything they
Yeah.
want.
83 foot.
Escort with sirens and flags and
Yeah.
wide load.
So the transportation fund, so we have $1.7 million of operating revenues, and we have almost $1.5 million of operating expenditures. I would like the revenues over expenditures to be more. However, this is our healthiest fund, the transportation fund right now, because you can see that it is covering all the operating expenditures and it's allowing us to also make investments in our infrastructure and equipment. But $232,000 of a $1.7 million budget isn't a ton. We really should try to figure out ways to get better, and we will. So capital outlay, there's $1.6 million of capital outlay costs, and the projected end of year fund balance is $107,511. Because we're spending all of this on capital, all the $232,000 on capital plus. So, their capital outlay, like that's the biggest, wait, did I have revenues broken down? Oh, okay, I keep forgetting about these lovely graphs. So you can see taxes is the biggest, is where they get the most of their revenue. And then intergovernmental revenue, which is from the county or the Kearney Special Road District, and the state of Missouri for gas tax and motor vehicle tax and things like that. Also, we have a one-time Mark ARPA distribution. I actually pulled it out of our operating revenues because we're not gonna get it every year. So if you are noticing and you're like, hey Sheila, your operating revenues doesn't match what it shows in the budget, it's because I pulled things out that are one time. And then you can see, you know, a lot of, we are actually spending the majority of our money on services, contractual services. And this is a unique situation because most of our funds are gonna be more personnel. And just because we're purchasing asphalt and oil and gravel and things like that, we have supplies and services that we're spending and reducing that personnel costs. So the capital outlay, $1.6 million basically. The equipment purchases are gonna be a hydraulic breaker and planer miller and an asphalt roller, and everything else is really investment in our infrastructure. So almost $400,000 of street mill and overlay work, $125,000 for the new MS4 stormwater program that we have to do since our population has grown and now we have to be licensed. We have $120,000 for pedestrian crossings. Also included in our revenues is a donation that we think that we're going to get to help pay for one of these crossings from a citizen. And then spending a lot of money this year in both street and water and wastewater on master plans, so that we can have a plan and know how to prioritize our money best, and then also kind of switch from being very reactive, waiting until some emergency happens or something breaks, to have proactive plans. So you have $400,000 for street and stormwater master planning, $85,000 for automated pavement data collection, and then we're gonna be transferring $350,000 to stormwater projects.
The roller, what do we use that for? Because we contract for milling or the
Right.
asphalt.
And we have shortfalls a lot of times in between our
Okay.
contracts, so the smaller things that we can handle in-house, we're gonna try to accomplish that
Great,
and cut down on some of the cost for contracting.
that's fantastic, thanks.
So
Like when you do the utility repair where there's a street cut, is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, and we have small potholes that appear after we contracted, and,
Sure.
you know, we can tackle that after they leave town still.
I see a lot of good one-time expenses here, but I like the master plan and the pavement data collection will show things that will need
That'd be kinda
to,
cool.
we have a list of other items already, but that's gonna add to that list of things that we'll need to address.
Yes, but now we'll know, instead of having this black, like, we know that we need to do a lot of future spending. But now we will be able to come up with a price to know exactly what that
Prioritize.
future spending is going to be. And then the next job will be trying to figure out how are we gonna fund that and coming up with a plan to be able to do that. So the water and sewer revenue fund, I am proposing this year that we split out, right now we have a combined fund where water and sewer revenue is all combined in one fund. I am asking to split it out, and that's how this budget is set up. But you still have this water and sewer revenue fund that has been in operations and is in operation this year. So there's a fund balance sitting there. And how I'm proposing to spend it is by transferring to capital project funds for those master plans for the water system and the sewer system, and also to purchase spend $40,000 on a billing software upgrade that is necessary because our billing software they're not going to continue the application that we are currently on. We have to do that upgrade. And so we have $1.1 million that is being proposed from that fund balance, and it's for master planning and for that software billing upgrade. Then we have the meter deposit fund. It's in your budget book because we are showing 3 prior years and then the current year. And so nothing is being budgeted, it's just for display only. And then Water Capital Improvement Fund. This fund has $500,000 of this $1.1 million has been transferred into this into this Water Capital Improvements Fund. to be able to pay for that master plan for the water department. Then we have a sewer capital improvements fund. So this is a little bit different than in the past. If you have a capital improvements fund, you can track projects clearly and forever and account for money that is restricted and has been appropriated by the board for those projects by putting money into a capital improvement fund instead of using the operating fund. So sewer, water, stormwater, park, I created capital project funds for all of those long-term projects, big projects. Some of them will have grant money joining them, but it's a good way for us to make sure that we can meet our obligations, and it's really for accounting purposes. And that's why I chose to do that. So the sewer capital improvement fund has $500,000 budgeted for the master plan for the sewer system. $100,000 has been budgeted for an anti-degradation study, and then $44,000 is being used to pay principal and interest payments on debt that was used to fund the rotary fan press dewatering system. And then the water construction fund, this is where the money for the new water tower and also the improvements to the plant to make the changes to the disinfection process to address the taste and odor problems has been budgeted.
So on that, I see it. I'm good, thank you.
And then the 33 highway construction fund, this fund is just used to account for bond proceeds that were issued to construct the I-35 and 19th Street interchange. And we have $5.4 million budgeted in there to finish it all up. And then $19,000 in the street construction fund. This fund was created to account for bond proceeds that were used to construct Watson Drive. I am have proposed $5,000 to get an additional wayfinding sign. That was requested by a citizen for the.
Would add the chamber to the signs.
It's the visitor, kind of the tourism or the.
I think that's a
Visitors
great
center.
idea.
Yes, and then the remaining balance of $14,000 to close this fund out would be transferred to the transportation fund. Then we have a water and sewer sinking fund. It's no longer needed. We paid off the 2001 SRF drinking water SRF loan in fiscal year 2023. So I'm closing that out. So it's just a transfer out to close that fund. Again, you'll see it for the next few years because we're gonna keep it for display purposes only to make sure that people can see a clear view of what's happened the last few years. The Water and Sewer Reserve Fund also was for those 2001 drinking water SRF, those SRF bond covenants, and that's being closed out. And then the water and sewer depreciation, same thing. So all of them are being transferred into that water and sewer fund where they originally came from. Okay, so now we start looking at operating revenues and expenses for the water and the sewer fund. So the proposed budget includes a water and sewer rate increase. In addition to that, it is doubling the discount that senior citizens receive each month to help offset that for people that are senior citizens that need to make sure that they can cover medication, food when they're on a fixed income. So in the water fund, you can see we have $3.1 million of operating revenues budgeted and about $3.1 million of operating expenditures. We do have a little revenues over expenditures of about $48,000. And that is not ideal. We have a lot of infrastructure in our water fund. We also have a water plant that needs to be maintained, so we really need to grow those revenues over expenses. But baby steps, and it helps to get that master planning done, so we actually have a clear big picture. And so, you know, we have a projected end of year fund balance of $28,000. That's because we're planning on spending 20,000 of this revenues over expenditures on money or capital outlay to comply with the EPA's lead and copper rule. And you can see, you know, the majority of our operating revenues are for charges for services in the water fund. We have a very teeny tiny sliver amount of other revenues. And then our operating expenditures, you know, almost 20% for debt service, 31% for supplies, 31% for services, 17% for personnel.
Sheila,
Yes.
I'm sorry that I'm surprised I didn't notice this, and I hate to ask this to you now, but like, for example, like in all the other funds, all the other departments besides water and sewer, like it appears employee benefits are all summed together instead of broken out like the other. Is there any reason why it's that way? And what caught my attention to that now is I just noticed that in water and sewer, we're increasing employees, but benefit cost is going down. I would expect it to do the opposite. Is that maybe because we don't have the training that we had in the last couple of years?
The loggers retirement.
Can you tell me what page you're on?
Yes, I'm on 63.
63.
Oh, 63.
It says expenses. I'm a little ahead of it, but so expenses, salary, wages, employee benefits compared to when I, for example, look at police department, employee, page 19, employee benefits is all broken out.
If you turn, Mayor, to page 65, you will see them all broken out.
Okay.
And page 63 is just a summary page. And then 65 gives you all the gory, lovely, wonderful details.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's just not consistent, so it's stuck out.
And it's because there's a general fund summary, but yes, it's
Okay.
presented differently.
All right, thanks.
For the general fund than it is for transportation, park, all of those. You're exactly right. And then, let's see. So let's go to the sewer fund. So you can see that operating, I do want to point out back here for the water fund. Well, I pulled out operating revenues. In revenues are bond proceeds for the water tower. Like we're planning on paying for that water tower with debt. So if you actually look at your budget pages, the revenues for the water fund is like 8 something million probably, if I could find it. And it's because it includes debt proceeds. And then the sewer fund, $2.5 million of revenues and $2.5 million of expenditures, giving us a whopping $450 cushion, which is very not ideal. And I really like, it was very hard to see this when we had a combined water and sewer fund. It's very hard to see that our water rates were supplementing our sewer rates. But here you can clearly see that sewer rates are not set where they need to be. And the $450 is dependent on the rate increase that you will be asked to approve on Tuesday night.
Jeez, this is with the raise already.
This is with these revenue numbers for both the water and the sewer fund have the revenues from the rate increase already calculated in there. And you can see for sewer, it's 100% fees. It's 100% charges for services. And then you can see that we have almost 40% of our sewer fund budget is going to cover debt service costs. And not only that, but our debt service was set up, so on a lot of our loans, we've been paying interest only, no principal. And that's just not, it's not sustainable. We need to change that. So, but that's where we are right now. All right, and so going on, we have park construction. This fund is where we have budgeted the Hall Park project and the new aquatic center community engagement process. We are depending on a grant for to construct Hall Park. That will cover half the cost. And then the CID, the Shops at Kearney CID is actually contributing and reimbursing us for all of the community engagement process that we are going through. Then the stormwater projects, $1.1 million of project costs, and that is for the replacing the 12th Street culvert and the Shadow Brook stormwater culvert. And then we have a sidewalk trail construction fund, and that is on page 70. And you can see in department requests in that column, there's a number of $267,700. That's how much we think the total engineering and design for this project will cost. But we didn't have enough money to fund it all, and that's why we have only $199,740. So we're gonna try to use tax from the following year to complete the project.
Can I add a little to that?
Absolutely.
So we did receive a grant from Mark. That grant is for 2025 to 2026 funding. So we're trying to move forward now with engineering so that we're time to do construction when that money becomes available.
Ready.
Yeah.
So we did receive that money.
We will.
We will.
Well, I mean,
We
we've
were
been
awarded.
Okay, have we made that announcement? Okay,
I don't know, maybe not.
I don't think I know.
Probably, but
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I'm not even sure. We haven't really received an official award.
Okay, when
We
we
need
do.
to
It's
wait.
gone,
Yeah.
it's gone through the process. I
Yeah.
believe it's been up to TTPC and the main Mark board.
Okay,
We have not received a letter saying, you guys have been awarded this grant.
Yeah, we voted on that 2 board meetings ago. I sat on the main Mark board. I was there voting that day. It's been
So
voted
it's
on.
been- it
It's
has
been
been-
voted on and approved by Mark.
okay, so
They've
when
just-
we get that official notification, we definitely want to share that information.
Yes. And then we have the 2015 general obligation bond fund. It's just making required principal and interest on the 2015 GO highway bonds. Those debt service payments are being paid with property tax receipts and a transfer from the capital improvement sales tax fund. The I-35 19th Street GO bonds, our bond fund is making principal and interest payments on the GO bond issue that's funding the new interchange. And then the inmate security fund, there's a $2 surcharge that's applied to individuals who violate are found guilty of violating municipal ordinances. And that money is restricted to funding the purchase and maintenance of live scan fingerprinting devices. Do you believe that the mobile fingerprint readers live scan?
You know, I'm not 100% sure, but I can sure check on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, see if
we'll
they
check.
could be used as such, because then there's.
Yes, then we get to free up some general fund money and make our fund balance a little bit healthier
What does live scan mean? Does it mean it's like,
I think they'd have, I think they'd have to work together.
We'll see.
I don't want to speak for chief, but I'd be surprised. I think they have to be able to communicate together. Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
I think I know the answer to this, and it's just because of the allocation and changing of, and once again, I hate to hit you this question. I can't believe I didn't pick up on this before now.
Because it's dense. This budget is dense.
This stuff usually sticks out to me. So when I look at now, I'm honed in on employee benefits.
Okay.
And so I look at our current fiscal year budget.
Give me a page.
Well, I'm honing in specifically on loggers. What I'm hoping you're gonna tell me is, it looks this way because of all the reallocation of employees, that you're not telling me that we lowered our logger expense all across the board because we have a huge balance in our loggers, our loggers account. So like, for example, last year, 143K was our loggers expense for City Hall. This year it's 55K. Court was 8K. Now it's 4. Community development is 34. Proposed was 5. PD was 274. Proposed was 125.
Is that the requested or the?
You are so astute. Look at you. So every year we get told by loggers what our rate is going to be. Right? So it changes every year based on an actuarial valuation that they do. Doesn't matter how much it has to increase, by state law, they can never increase it by more than 1%. If that actuarial valuation says that our rate is reduced, it's going to reduce. So our rate actually slightly went down for both police and general employees.
Okay. I've took exception with our auditor the last several years, like, oh, you have a surplus of $1 million in your retirement account. I'm like, yeah, but look at the economy in the last 10 years. What's going to happen, what's going on the last 18 months in the economy. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't, there was logical reason that we were funding less in loggers.
Yes, we're
Okay.
funding less because that's
Okay.
what the calculation said.
Great.
Yes. We don't actually have.
So if you
any
saw me
of that money.
panically going back and forth, I'm like, oh, this is, yeah.
You're like, Sheila, you are playing risky. I am not risky.
So next year they could hit
Increase
us
it.
with much higher numbers.
They could, but the most that they could make us go up is 1%.
Yeah, a state.
So when I am
Boy, what a
building the
big drop
budget,
down.
when I'm building the budget, just so you guys know how I operate, I always automatically put a 1% increase in our rates. And then I get so excited when they tell me that it's gonna be less than 1%. Because I prepare for,
even though the mayor might be thinking, well, this year, they tell us it drops 5%, but they can't raise it more than 1%, well, then the following year, it seems weird.
And to our administrator's defense, she did communicate this to me when she got the new, she got the communication. You did communicate that to me, I'm sorry.
hey, there's a lot of stuff here. I do not expect you to memorize everything I say.
I do.
Did you see me? I was like, oh, man, freaking out a little bit, sorry.
Okay, so then we have the wireless capital improvement fund. This fund brings in less and less money each year, but our required principal and interest payments on the debt that it's paying does not decrease, but it will someday when we get it paid off. So then we have the ARPA Act fund. I'm closing this out. All the money has been appropriated by the board, and so it is getting transferred to the correct capital project fund so that we know that that money is set for that capital project and nobody can come and ask for you to unfund a project, because that would be bad, because we're making big decisions based on what you guys say you're gonna spend it on. And then the shops at TIF fund, oh my goodness, I am so close to being done. The shops at TIF fund, This fund just accounts for the economic activity taxes and the payment in lieu of taxes that are generated within the shops at Kearney TIF district boundaries. And then the monies are distributed in accordance with the TIF contract. The school district gets part, the fire district gets part, and then the rest goes to reimburse the developer for costs that he has properly certified that were in accordance with the TIF plan. And so my last two slides are really just to let you guys know, like, so we got to fund a lot of things. I am really proud of this year's budget, but not everything got to be funded. There were a lot of requests that we could not fund. So even though we did a really good job, I want you guys to know what staff needs are so that you know the big picture. So there were $1 million of personnel requests that were not able to be funded. That was 11 full-time positions, 2 water laborers, 2 sewer laborers, a park laborer, a park superintendent, a utilities and streets administrative assistant, an engineering technician, which would be somebody kind of like an inspector for public infrastructure, a city engineer, an IT technician, so we could do in-house IT instead of paying a company that isn't here 24, or I guess nobody was gonna live here 24/7 unless you're police. But somebody that, you know, that we have in-house always available to us, and then a city clerk position.
That paints a really important picture for me on top of all the other department, you know, requests and needs. For example, I don't know, you know, the Kearney Enrichment Council asking the board for $35,000 additional funding this year. They're a beautiful thing and do a great thing for our community. But we've got so many other needs and hard decisions to make that could impact and influence our whole community. And so this is something that we've never seen before, or really, but I think making sure that our board understands and knows there's obviously, you know, we're not like the state government or federal government. I don't know if the state can. I know the federal government, yeah, the state can't, but the federal government can deficit spend. We obviously can't, so.
Some of these things I think are positions that people thought for a long time. Caleb Kentner, Kathy would know Caleb, he was my position before Wade even. And I remember seeing some memo he put together regarding us having a city engineer on staff.
Yeah.
You know, even back then, we used Library Harrison or Larkin for a long time, but sometimes having those in-house could be a good thing.
Not that we don't appreciate their services in many years, but, you know, Donnie's a prime example of look at, you know, when his crew does a sidewalk compared to, you know, using an outside vendor. Not that we don't appreciate McConnell and all the sidewalks they've done and Chris Riley and his group, but the savings we can save, you know, our taxpayer money.
Or
by
maybe
having us up in
there are a
house.
lot of things that we could have a city engineer, if we have one on staff, that they could do some of those things.
Right,
And we wouldn't save on all the outside engineering.
right.
So that engineer would be able to manage the outside engineering projects and help review them to make sure that things weren't going to be missed. There are just things when you do not work for the city, when you're not here day in and day out, there's information that gets lost. And so sometimes we are actually wasting money. I hate to say that, but we're spending money that if we had a city engineer, we would be able to save, because we would have somebody that knew all of the intimate details. And that's one of the reasons that I'm really excited about having in-house economic development. I think that we will also see a benefit from that position coming in-house. And then we have $2.1 million of non-personnel items that were not able to be funded. The Kearney Enrichment Council additional contribution, so they did make a request and for additional money, and it was not funded. The exterior restoration for the museum, the balance. 105 Main, parking lot improvements were requested. We couldn't fund that this year. Nation and Cedarwood Parkway streetlights. Sidewalk data collection. water line replacement, sewer lining, manhole replacement and rehab, and new additional digester tanks to help with capacity. And then I have no idea what my last slide is. Let's see. Oh, and then I just wanted to give you some, some overviews. So our current year revenues, sales tax was projected at 8%. We have the full year of the use tax, the interest income, and we kind of already talked about these, projected higher, building permits projected to decline, and then the water and sewer rate increases. But some of the revenues opportunities that we have in future years, or even this year, is the 3% recreational marijuana sales tax. Possibly, well, when we ask voters if they want the aquatic center, they will have to fund a GO bond for actually constructing the aquatic center, but it's going to be a significant amount of money to run that aquatic center that will not be able to be recouped just from user fees. And so asking them, would you also like to do a 0.5-cent sales tax? We would have to have both of those passed in order to actually do the aquatic center.
Yeah, there's no sense doing an aquatic center if we can't support it yearly and run it and have lifeguards and
True.
Maintain it year after year.
Correct. And so those are some, but that 0.5-cent park sales tax could also take some pressure off the general fund to allow us to be able to, increase services that the general fund is funding to kind of help support park, which is now being funded almost $500,000 from the general fund. So that is my presentation. So, and the mayor is doing a calculation.
It is just so much to take in at once, and the 2.5% for employees in some years where there is inflationary times like we are experiencing now, inflation is more than that, so they're not even keeping up.
So I agree with that. Just my response to that and to our staff and our board is, please keep in mind that our department heads and administrator assessed current market, so current numbers that would take into consideration, it's no secret that it's definitely an employee-friendly market.
Oh,
Yeah, at the bank, we've assessed increases across the board, and they're gonna continue to have to, but their current placement on the proposed salary schedule takes into consideration current market rates that include the inflation factor. So I think what you're saying, though, is to make sure that we're paying attention to that as we move forward, so we continue not to compress.
Oh, definitely. I have watched a lot of companies and employees, different places. They literally lose ground after just a few years. I see everyone nodding their heads. We all have seen it, and let's not make City of Kearney one of those employers.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And 2.5% for one step, and remember that each
There's
employee
the
is
possibility
eligible.
of the other.
Do you automatically hire somebody in at step one?
No,
Okay.
we will take into account previous experience, also licensures, qualifications, education, looking at each individual and placing them where they would be, where we're competitive with other people doing hiring.
Gotcha, okay.
One thing I think is, I'm so proud of, and is a lot of municipalities, Clay County just gave a separate market increase to their sheriff's department only, and just deputies, I don't believe non-post certified deputies received increases. But we address that for every department in the city. So that's, something to be proud of. We're not just focusing on one department. We're really looking at being the employer of choice for every department in our city. So to me, that's exciting, and it feels good to be able to do that.
There's great benefit to retaining employees. You're not spending all the money to recruit, you're not spending all the money to retrain. So I believe that if you pay well enough that you can retain employees, in the long run, you're saving money and it's more responsible in the way that we run the city. So I applaud you all for the hard work that you guys did on this budget. I know it wasn't a fun process, it never is, but you guys, this is the most information I've had in the 4 years that I've been here, so I think this has been fantastic.
Can I just say that I love doing budget? I actually was living my best life doing budget. It is super challenging. It is a puzzle. It is a delicate balancing act. And I am always intrigued about like following the thread. And it was so like, I know so much more about this city than I knew when I started this process in October. Like, this is kind of like the gold mine of information. And so I am super excited that I got to spend so much time going into depth. And it's the roadmap to everything. And I really want you guys to know what I know, because you guys are the ones that have to make the decisions for the community. You know, I can give you recommendations, I can help you figure out ways, but you guys are making the hard decisions. And so please don't ever hesitate to ask questions. And then the department heads are the ones that they know what their departments need to be successful. And so, yeah.
This is the most in-depth budget process that I know I have been through, and probably our other department heads. And it's gonna, this first year, yeah, it was a lot different, a lot more detailed, but when we go back to get ready to do next year's budget, the transparency that we'll see from our different line items will help us prepare for next year a lot better.
First time of anything is always more difficult. It's just the nature of the beast. But the second time you try something, it's a little easier. And by the third time,
Yeah. It also makes us much better stewards of taxpayer dollars, because we have a clear plan to know how every penny needs to be spent. And it's thought through, it's not reactive. It is well planned out. And so, yeah, you guys should be proud of all your department heads. And proud of yourselves for sitting through this. Like, it would have been a lot on a regular meeting night. So I appreciate the mayor setting a special work session, even though it took some of your Saturday morning and it took some of our Saturday morning.
my husband's over at the museum volunteering for me today because none of my volunteers were able to.
Hope you give a piece of pad of paper.
So
That's
this
so
was
you can take
a
notes.
community, at least for my family.
Well, thank you again, Sheila, and department heads. I enjoyed going through this process with you all this year. It's been a couple month long process, but as Sheila said, this is one of our most important duties to do. So I look forward to putting this to vote to the board Tuesday evening at our meeting. With that being said, I will close our work session and thank you all for your time.